Hello and welcome to the Workplace Options podcast. My name is James Callender and I'm the Director of Business Solutions for Australia and New Zealand. And for this conversation, I am reconnecting with Angela Hucker, who I previously explored a blueprint for success to empower women in construction with. Before I reintroduce Ange, I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people who are a clan of the Eora Nation whose country I am recording this podcast from. First Nations people have lived in Australia for tens of thousands of years, living in balance with their environment. Now, Ange, as we now know her, Angela Hucker is the CEO of Epic, a construction industry expert with over 20 years experience within the industry. Angela has a remarkable portfolio including power, oil and gas and renewables that we're going to dial into today, infrastructure, commercial, civil, mega projects, and even a spotlight on the US TV show Megastructures. Angela's first-hand experience as a FIFO worker in remote corners of Australia fueled her mission to eradicate the challenges women face in the industry and positively advocate for change. Ange is passionate in reshaping the industry and inspiring us all along the way. Ange, welcome again.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Now, Ange, before we dive in deeper into your energy sector experience, I thought I might start on the climate change side of things, which many listeners may consider the catalyst for renewable energy. It certainly feels to me that the volume of climate change conversations has been amplified, really dialed up over the past few years. Do you feel this too, Ange?
Absolutely. It just seems to be the new buzz thing at the moment is climate change, renewables, sustainability, all of that. It's certainly amplified a lot lately.
It's everywhere. And now with natural disasters increasing their frequency and intensity, I feel like a week doesn't go by without the mainstream media reporting on one or more disasters. Just earlier, I Googled natural disasters across the globe, and according to Relief Web, there were 76 alerts as at today, 49 excluding epidemics.
That's crazy.
It blew my mind. Now, one of the most publicised was or is the Spanish floods, with their current death toll sitting at around 3 individuals as at the 6th of September 2023. However, when was the last time that you heard about the Sri Lankan food security crisis, where following 2 consecutive seasons of poor harvests, as of May 2023, 10,000 people living in Sri Lanka are considered severely acute food insecure? Had you heard of that one, Ange?
No, I haven't.
and there was 46 others in the list as well. So listeners, whilst you may be trying to draw the parallels between a Sri Lankan food crisis and our guest's Ange's construction experience, not to mention why you're hearing this on the Wellbeing at Work podcast, hear me out. Climate change is a known impact for crop cultivation and food production. And food is one of the basic necessities of life. And I know that my mental health isn't so great when I'm hungry. I like to refer to it as hangry. Angie, are you familiar with this term, hangry?
I get the hangries quite a bit, I can tell you.
So
yes.
Global leaders have recognised the multitude of impacts climate change is having, from rising temperatures to rising sea levels, and the impact that they're having upon our planet. Now, at least here in Australia, we are starting to see and hear some real commitment to change. Now, topical at the moment, as you referenced, Ange, is the shift to renewable energy as a way to reduce our country's emissions. For our listeners that may not be familiar, the Australian government renewable energy target set for 2030 is 82% renewable energy, and we have a net zero target for 2050. There is plenty of conversations happening at the moment around the volume of work required to get our country to meet those deliverables. And can you tell us about your experience across the various energy sectors? And you've worked in renewables as well as some of the non-renewable sectors as well.
Correct. Yeah. No, thanks for that. So over the years, I've actually been involved in a number of solar farm projects as well, all across Australia, as well as contributing to the Marinus Link project. So the Marinus Link project isn't in construction phase at the moment. It is actually in design and approval phase. But there's so what the Marinus Link project is the second interconnector between Tasmania and Victoria, and that's actually being able to get the pumped hydro energy plus also some of the wind energy as well, and being able to transport that to Victoria and into the national electrical grid, or the NEM. So like within the last couple of days, there's actually been, and you may have seen on LinkedIn, there's actually been two significant developments with this particular project. So there was a new agreement with the federal government to help propel the project forward, and then they've actually been able to reserve agreement for the cable as well. So being involved in, having been involved with some of the solar farms and getting those built, and now being involved in some of the design and approval phase, that's actually given me really good oversight with what happens before the construction actually starts as well, and how much work actually goes into these projects.
It's absolutely wild, isn't it? Like, I feel the statistic that I recently learned was something like 10,000 kilometers of cable needs to be laid to transport the electricity from these newly developed and constructed energy production facilities. Now, let's say that's water, let's say that's wind, let's say that's solar, to name the top three, and get that to where the energy is needed, because our entire infrastructure here in Australia has been built around electricity production facilities, and then we've got the substation, the grids that sit around that. But now we've got our energy production happening in rural and remote areas. We need to actually get that power back into the communities in which that are using that power. Like, I just found that statistic phenomenal.
It's mind-blowing. And when you think, like Australia compared to the rest of the world, and a lot of these cables, and this was from my experience of being involved in the Marinus Link project, a lot of these cables are obviously manufactured overseas because they're HVDC cables, very heavy-duty cables and whatnot. But when you look at what's actually happening in the rest of the world, Australia is only 3% of what's actually happening worldwide. And to think that we need 10,000 kilometres, like you touched on, James, what's the rest of the world actually getting, and what does that look like from a global picture as to supply and everything as well? Like, that's mind-blowing.
And that's a really great segue, Ange, into how are you seeing companies react and scale to meet these targets domestically? And naturally that plays into the global market as well. And what opportunities does this present for people looking to either enter the construction industry, or those already working in the construction industry to maybe follow their passion for renewables?
Yeah, no, good question. So at present, there's currently 78 projects that are either under construction or due to start construction around Australia. And so that's based on projects that they've either reached financial close or they're not yet commissioned, and they cover projects such as wind, solar, hydro, bioenergy. Now with that, it's about $20.9 billion worth of capital investment, which is a huge amount of money. So me personally, obviously, I've seen a huge uptake on the renewable projects. There's obviously, to be able to support all the uptake of the renewable projects, there's a lot that needs to happen in the power space. So there's a lot of upgrading happening with the national grid. There's, a large number of transmission projects currently being undertaken. The biggest one, that most people may know about at the moment is Project Energy Connect. So that's delivering the energy interconnector between South Australia and New South Wales. And there's going to be an added connection to Victoria. There's also the new copper string project in Queensland. So that's an 1,100 kilometre high voltage electricity transmission line, which will go from Townsville to Mount Isa. And what that will do is connect the Queensland's northwest minerals province to the national electricity grid as well. So what I've actually seen companies do to be able to react and scale in a variety of ways. So there's different things, like they're setting sustainability goals to be able to reduce, carbon emissions, looking at conserving water, how to promote, diversity and inclusion, eliminating waste. There's obviously a lot of investment in renewable energy. A lot of companies and buildings are actually using their roofs to be able to put solar panels on their roofs and generate their own power for their own companies as well. They're looking at, supply chains as well, at what this whole environmental and social impact is on the supply chains as well. A lot of investment and research and development in this space as well to help create, innovative and sustainable products, and that's green technologies, eco-friendly materials, sustainable packaging. It's a whole suite of things that go into this. So what each company does is obviously different, but I think, collectively it is actually helping, going to affect a change. Now, as to your second question about the opportunities, I mean, for me, this actually reminds me of the gas projects 10 years ago, because there was a huge amount of gas projects all being undertaken at once. There was all the stuff that was happening on the upstream with the pipelines to come from the gas wells and everything. Where I was working was out in Western Queensland, and then I actually moved to the downstream on the gas projects themselves. In Darwin, it was 500 kilometres offshore in the ocean, and they were bringing the pipeline into Darwin itself to be able to convert it. There was all the stuff happening over the west as well with Wheatstone. So this actually reminds me of 10 years ago with the gas projects, because there was this huge focus and everyone wanted to get on a gas project, and now it's going to be everyone will want to get on a renewable project. So, so I just think the opportunities, when I think back to 10 years ago, what the opportunities were there, it's actually being mirrored to how it will be now. Like the job creation, there's going to be so many jobs with this, and for people at all levels. Right from, the civil construction of the work to the electrical installation to the, the operations and the maintenance side. There's huge amounts of job creation, which will be for everyone, like, project managers, engineers, electricians, construction workers, environmental safety, the whole suite of people, but what it does as well, by having this huge pipeline of work ahead of us, it actually helps with skills development as well. So people are actually given the opportunity that they can work somewhere, they can actually help increase their skills. They might move up through the ranks where they're actually a tradesperson, move to a leading hand, move to a supervisor. So the opportunities there are great as well. There's obviously going to be a lot of diverse roles. So working in this space, because renewable energies, there's a whole bunch of different technologies that go with it. So, that creates a whole bunch of diversity that people, will be able to explore as well. Long-term employment, I mean, that goes without saying, because when you have many years of projects that take, years to build, that's a good opportunity for long-term employment for people. Innovation as well. This is a new space, the push on renewable energy is new, and there's a lot of innovation that's involved with this as well. A big part of this, which I think is really worth mentioning, is the investment in the regional areas as well. So a lot of these projects are actually built in rural, remote and regional areas. So what that does for a regional town, it actually helps, put investment back into the town as well, which is great for regional communities. And what that does, I was recently at a NAWIC summit in Sydney, and, the opportunities that are available for people who are regional, who want to get into construction, are very limited at present. But what this does, it actually helps open those doors for them a little bit more, because this is where these projects are going. So people who are regional, they may be able to get their foot in the door with these projects, because there would be an element of, try and get as much as you can locally to help minimise the impact of bringing people in and use the resources that you actually have available to you. So I think that's a great opportunity for regional areas in Australia as well. So, and they're not without saying, obviously it looks great working on a big project. is great on your resume. It can open up other opportunities, potential opportunities internationally as well. And just to be able to have something like that to say, hey, I was able to work on this project, like how awesome is that? That does open up other opportunities.
And I think if I recall from our previous podcast, that was your favorite thing about construction, about working in construction, being able to drive by, see it in the media, whatever it is, and to say that you personally contributed to that thing, whatever it may be, coming into existence. And that's such a special experience.
Oh, it is. And, the twofold with this as well, it's not that you're not only going to be able to see something that you've built, but you're going to know that you've actually built something that's helping, the community and, with the climate change and everything as well. Like, you're actually helping make an environmental impact with what you've done as well. So I think that's actually, really special for people to have that opportunity.
And it's interesting that you mention that climate change piece, Ange, because here at Workplace Options, we support a touch over on 116,000 organizations around the world. And
wow.
those organizations cover just under 80 million people. So it's a phenomenal pool of individuals that we are providing support for. And now what we have heard through our connections across the world is that employees are asking for support from their employers when it comes to responding to climate change. And as an organization, we understand the mental health impacts of things like eco-anxiety or climate anxiety. There's also a term called solastalgia, which is around the fear of changes in the environment, and a fear of climate change more broadly. Now, this is permeating companies across the globe. So not only do we have opportunities for individuals that are passionate about the construction side of things, but we've also got companies that have employees that are really concerned about the state of the climate, and the small roles that they may be able to play to reach a point of mental equilibrium, or to be able to change things in their own personal life that can make a positive step towards climate change. Now, Angie mentioned there around the fact that there's going to be so much work to be done, so much. And we already know that there is a finite amount of human capital available, and there is already, I guess, a continued war on talent. So I guess with my mental health cap on, I'm seeing a risk of burnout as well in this industry as we try and race towards this 2030 target that is coming at us quicker than we're getting towards it. What's your experience been with burnout in the construction industry? And is there any strategies, I guess, that people working in the industry can take on to make sure that it is sustainable and they can see out those long-term employment opportunities, because there is so much work to be done?
Yeah, good question. And I'll touch on, like the rosters that I was working when I was doing fly in, fly out and working on the gas projects. They were not friendly. They were 4 weeks on, 1 week off. We would work 28 days straight, and we would have every 13th day off, because that was what the law was. Every 14th day off. And when you're working 28 days straight, 14, you're only getting 1 day off in 28. I would generally be on site at 5 a.m. in the morning. I wouldn't leave any time before about 6 p.m. at night. When I was doing end of month, it would be anywhere from 7 to 7:30 at night. So you're looking at consistently, between 12 and 14-hour days for 28 days with 1 day off. Burnout was a big thing. I would get home and I would be absolutely shattered on the first couple of days of my break, and that was just my body being purely exhausted. So I think in regards to burnout, rosters like that are not friendly. They are not sustainable for the long term. They did actually recognise that after these gas projects and doing the 4-in-1 rosters, how much psychological impact that actually had on people. So I think companies personally have a responsibility to ensure there are fairer rosters for their workers as well, where they're not actually causing that burnout, and they take that responsibility on board. as an individual, we also have a responsibility ourselves, and that is actually looking after ourselves. You know, making sure, I'm very big on holistic health and well-being, and, you know, that comes down to your diet, your nutrition, you know, your exercise, your mindset, your resilience, your support, your community, everything around you. Like, it all contributes to what helps with your well-being. And it's very important to make sure that we're doing what we need to serve us best as well. But, you know, it is twofold. Companies have a responsibility, but we also have a personal responsibility ourselves. So.
And I think, I don't think, I'm going to improve that. I recall from our previous conversation that routine was really important to you, Ange, particularly when you were working in these longer shifts, I guess, or in communities that may have been a fly in, fly out, which several of these renewable projects may also have a considerable amount of time that you commute in. Maybe you live on camp for a while. Can you remind our listeners what that routine looked like for you and how that helped you maintain your holistic well-being?
Yeah, sure. So my routine was always making sure that, you know, my options at the end of the day was either go to the pub or go to the gym. So I selected going to the gym because to me that actually helped maintain, you know, it is proven that by doing exercise, it actually helps with your stress, reduce your stress. It helps with your mental well-being. It helps release the endorphins and, you know, all the good stuff that you need in your body to help get you going through. It may not necessarily be the last thing that you want to do at the end of the day, and especially if you've had a very intense day and it's, you know, 12, 14 hours. But, you know, even half an hour of doing something that's purposeful and mindful and supporting you and being disciplined with that, it's actually going to set you up for the long term. So I think that's it's key and it's fundamental for people to be able to sustain those types of situations. Construction is a very intense industry in itself. When you add on the elements of, you know, working remotely, long hours, which are all identified as psychosocial hazards, you know, there are things that people need to be able to do to help support themselves as well.
So we have unpacked that there is a lot that goes into climate anxiety and the construction of these renewable assets. And if we were to review, we've got the catalyst for climate change and I guess the impact that is having upon food sources and temperatures and the other various elements that we come to rely on as humanity here. And then on the flip side, we've got all of the opportunities that are coming out of this climate change that we're in, and that is specifically within this renewables industry. And as you rightly pointed out, Ange, there is lots of work to be done. There is an incredible amount of innovation that is to happen in this space, and that's really exciting. And we may start to see individuals that are applying their skill set in parallel industries. We may get people that are start moving from the tech sector, for example, across into this space because they've got some really great skills that they can apply. As these workforces swell, the capabilities of health, safety and wellbeing teams will need to expand to make sure that those individuals that are working on these projects feel physically and mentally supported as well as being psychologically and physically safe at work so that these organizations can meet the construction targets so that our country as a whole can meet our emission targets. So I think that it is such an exciting period, and it's interesting that you have reflected upon the gas period and how you are seeing a lot of similarities, but hopefully as an industry, construction has learnt from what they did during the gas boom, I guess you could say, what worked well, what didn't work so well, and how we can carry that into this renewables boom to make sure that it is sustainable for the employees that are working within it, because the environment is something that we all have to, I guess, live with.
Well, the environment, if we don't look after it, it's going to be destroyed. And, we all have a responsibility to do that. So, yeah, look, I agree wholeheartedly. And I truly do hope that companies have learnt from 10 years ago with the gas boom and identified that, those type of rosters were not sustainable for people and for well-being. And now, obviously, with, a lot of emphasis as well on psychosocial hazards as well, there's a lot more attention going to be given with how things are going to be structured and set up so they are successful. And it's not just a burn and churn process with people, because you just can't do that. We all know now there is not enough people to deliver the work. The stats that I heard recently was, they need 226,000 people to deliver the pipeline of work. 226,000 people.
Wow.
Where are they coming from? Where are they coming from? Because this is Australia, like the rest of the world, is experiencing this same situation at the moment because of what's happening in this space. So,
and as you said, we're 3%. That's just 226,000 people to deliver 3% of the broader construction.
That's right.
Wow.
So this is where, I actually feel we're at the crest of a wave of significant change starting to happen, like monumental change starting to happen. And, with what I've seen just even come out this year with, the psychosocial hazards and the different legislation being passed and the increasing opportunities for female to enter the construction industry and, do trades and things like that. Like, I think all of that is just fabulous. However, on the flip side of that, we need to make sure that the industry itself is promoting and setting it up so that, everyone's mental, emotional and psychological safety is front of mind. Because if they don't, and if it's not front of mind for these companies and businesses and projects, they are not going to be able to get these projects built in the time they need to get them built. And that this is key. It's fundamental.
And as always, you are an absolute font of knowledge. And I think your insight for our listeners is incredibly valuable and incredibly refreshing. And I truly hope that you and I can continue our conversations. I won't throw you under the bus with another topic just like I did last time. But I do know that you and I have got some events coming up together that we will be exploring these topics together deeper. And I really look forward to reconnecting with you and tracking Australia's progress against these targets and how we are bringing our people along that journey in a safe way.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the opportunity, James, and I look forward to what we're working on in the future as well. And I just can't stress this enough for all the listeners out there, just how vital this is to be able to ensure, our people are looked after and they're looked after well, because that's key. There's a saying by Richard Branson, look after your people and your people will look after your business. And this is something that needs to be front of mind with companies.
There you go. Thank you very much, Ange, and thank you for our listeners.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Bye.